what is impossible? All impossible is what somebody thinks. It's just a construct in your mind, right? Like people say, well, that's beyond the barrier. Well, who set the barrier? Now, there used to be all kinds of impossible things that are now not considered impossible at all. We thought it was impossible to have a woman as the Secretary of State. Well, guess what? Yeah. Guess what? John Kerry, our senator, is the first white guy to be Secretary of State in 20 years. It's been all women and an African-American man. And that, I'll tell you, because I was in foreign policy at the time, and when Madeleine Albright, President Clinton said to me, what do you think? What do you think? I could appoint this white guy, or I could have, Madeleine Albright. I said, hands down, Madeleine Albright, And it wasn't because I thought she was better on foreign policy. I just thought, we got to break this ceiling. We've just got to. And I'll tell you why I thought that. Every one of you has your life experiences that you relate to, and you have a spine of life experiences, and they really create who you are. And they determine how you walk in the world. Well, I have two life experiences that were that important to me. One was when I was 29. How many of you are under 29? Aha! And shall I ask how many are over? I don't have to. Okay. You see, I go to Harvard. I can figure this out. Okay. So you have this kind of experience ahead of you. So here I am in Dallas, Texas. Those of you who are over 50 understand that Dallas, Texas in the 70s has a certain meaning. Very, very conservative, not just politically, but just in the way the world works. So I am an owner of an oil and gas company, and the vice president of the company says, or I say to him, hey, Tom, we should have lunch. He says, Swanee, let me know next time you'll be in town, because I'm living in Denver. So I do, and he says, great. And he said, I'll make a reservation. I said, you don't need to. I'll make the reservation. Oh, no, Swanee. No, Tom, I'll do it. So day comes, and I say the reservation is in the Petroleum Club. Now, the Petroleum Club is a place that heads of petroleum, oil and gas companies go, and they make their deals. It's kind of like politicians on the golf course or students sitting around in the student lounge. That's where the most important transactions happen, not in the classroom. Okay, so we go up the elevator. It's a real tall building, and we go up the elevator. Doors open. And there is a tall African-American man in a red coat. And he says, hello, good day. I have a beautiful table for you over here by the window in the ladies' dining room. The laugh came from people over 50. Because it used to be that any kind of institution, a professional institution like this, almost any kind, was segregated. Not the way you think. It was even segregated in terms of where women could go and where men could go. For example, the U.S. Senate didn't have a women's bathroom during this time because they didn't expect women to be in the Senate. That gives you some kind of sense of the culture. Okay, so we're up there, and I say, oh, no, thank you, I reserved a table in the main dining room. Well, if you have a name like Swanee, nobody can tell if you're a man or a woman, right? It's one of the few advantages. So Tom's getting nervous, and he said, and the maitre d' says, but I have a beautiful table over here, and it's in a corner, it's private, etc. I said, no, thank you. I have a reservation in the main dining room. And, oh, in fact, I see the name Hunt over there on the table. That's our table. Tom at this point says, okay, Swanee, I get it. Okay, let's go. I said, no, Tom, I have a table in the main dining room. Those of you over 50 remember that we were doing training in this. We actually were. We would train so that we would say the same thing over and over. We would stay calm. It was kind of like what's happening, you know, with Martin Luther King, with training in the church basements to be, you know, nonviolent resistance. You just say the same thing over and over. You sit down in the Walgreens at the bar of the restaurant, and you just sit there and wait for someone, you know, if you're African American, and you wait for people to not serve you, that kind of thing. Okay, so same thing. So I say, no, our table's over there. Tom is saying, let's go, please, Swanee, please. And I say, no, our table's there. And the maitre d', this powerful, tall black man says to me, ma'am, I can take you to that table. It will cost me my job. And that was an amazing moment for me because I realized that I had more in common with this tall black man standing there in front of me than I did with Tom. That was an amazing moment. Dallas was completely segregated. I did not know any black people. There was like 25% black. I did not know one black person who didn't work in our yard or clean our house. Now that may seem impossible for you to understand, but that was just how it was. And I can't explain it to you, except to say the churches were segregated, the restaurants were segregated. Even the State Fair of Texas had Colored Day. Right? Even the water fountains said white and colored. So I didn't know any, and yet I realized the person I had something in common with was he, because he couldn't eat in that restaurant either. Okay. Can anyone relate to that? I mean, in your own lives today? Well, let me tell you what you might relate to, is that when he said that to me, and Tom said, could we please go? I didn't know what to do. I didn't have a next step. So we got back in the elevator and we went down and we got a sandwich somewhere. So I consider that an attempt story that ended in a failure. Now maybe Tom learned a little something, maybe, I don't know what else, but maybe the story traveled and 100 years later, they decided to let women in. I don't know. But it never felt like a great experience to me. Can anyone at least relate to that? Okay, thank you. Thank you. And that crosses ages. All right, so now I want you to fast forward 17 years. Now I have become this real big deal. I have become the U.S. ambassador to Austria, and that means I'm full-time overseeing an embassy in Vienna with 500 employees. We're working in 21 countries. Actually, from there, we have the largest intelligence operation in the world because we've been spying on countries, all across the Soviet Union, et cetera. The Soviet Union has fallen apart. It's a time of tremendous turmoil. Countries don't know which way they're going. Are they going to stay communist? Or are they going to follow the West? It's just a mess. And there's this secure place called Vienna that juts out into Eastern Europe, even though it's part of Western Europe. Okay. So to our south is this large country, Yugoslavia. And Yugoslavia has come to be headed up by a tyrant who is later indicted as a war criminal. Well, all the states are breaking up inside Yugoslavia. One of them is called Bosnia. The conflict is so awful inside of Bosnia that 150,000 people have been killed. It is like Syria, which you've been following on the news, except it's a country of about 4 million people. And Syria, I should know, but let's say it's 30 million, okay, or 40 million. So this is a really small country. So this is like Eastern Mass, 150,000 people killed. Can you get that? And that's killed. That's not people dying of heart attacks or people dying of cancer. I mean, they're killed, they're shot, they're blown up. It's like it's like the marathon bombing, But it's happening every day for 3.5 years, and people are living in their basements. They're cowering in there. Okay, so what's happening mostly is that there's a group called the Serbs, and they are wanting to take over, and they're trying to push out a third of the population, who are the Muslims. All right, can you get that? A third of the population is trying to be killed, raped, mutilated. This is in Europe, right? So, I mean, it's just inconceivable. The U.S. doesn't want to intervene. They think, oh, we're going to get in there. We won't be able to get out. Most of the European countries are saying the same thing. I'm pushing for intervention. I'm right there. I'm hearing the stories. So finally, there's this massacre. And sometimes change happens only when there's a god-awful something happens. So there's this massacre, and 8,000 boys and men are rounded up. They are unarmed, and they're all executed and thrown into mass graves. The women, the mothers, and the children, and the very old people, they've been put on buses. They've been told, oh, the boys are going to come. And the young men are going to come. And the women wait, and they wait, and they wait 100 miles away, and they never see the men in their life again. And the international community, meaning all the countries like ours and the United Nations, feel so ashamed of what they've allowed to happen that they just want to forget it. So I'm working with these women. First of all, that triggers our intervention. We do intervene, we stop the war, etc. Something we could have done 2 years earlier. Okay, so I'm in this role of this diplomat. I'm seen as the hope because I get it, etc., but I don't have enough power to do what I want to do. So these women come to me and they say, we've been completely forgotten. We're living in burned out houses. Can you do anything to remind the world? And so we pulled together 6,000 of them. And we're going to have a stadium like this, except huge sports stadium. And the women are going to embroider the names of their missing boys and men on different colored cloths. And we're going to hang them all over. If you can imagine, all these brightly colored pieces of fabric. And so I'm talking with one of the women right before, and she is saying to me, I lost my husband, I lost my 2 brothers, I had 3 boys, and I know the others may be dead. I've heard the stories, but my youngest son, he was the fastest in his class. He was the fastest runner in his class. And I know that he was able to run into the woods. I know it. And he's in the woods right now, and he doesn't know the war is over. And I have to say to her what I had been told by a general. For this gathering, where you have Queen Noor from Jordan flying in and all these other officials from the UN, we will not provide you security. And security is key, in case there's a Serb attack. We will not provide you security unless you invite and have the mothers of the men who committed the massacre. Because we want to be fair. So I'm saying to this woman who is shaking like this, I'm saying, my heart is with you. I'm crying, okay? I say, I have to ask you though, when we have this gathering, we can't have security provided, meaning soldiers, to protect us unless we invite the mothers of the Serbs who just killed the 5 men and boys in your life. And I'm thinking, oh, what do I know about trauma? What do I know about the psychology? What do I know about the wounds of war? How on earth could I say this to her? How on earth? I mean, it's like ripping her open. And she looked at me and she said, Ambassador Hunt, we're all mothers. That was the moment for me. That was the life-changing moment. It wasn't my courage, it was being with her. And since then, I've worked in 40 conflict areas, and I've heard these stories every day, whether it's Congo or Colombia or Korea, I have heard these stories every day. Guys, please don't feel like I'm saying anything negative about you, truly. Truly, your role in supporting women and girls is so important. But can you imagine if she had said to me, you know, it's impossible, Ambassador Hunt. It's impossible to do that. There's no use trying. These women don't stare at the maitre d' and the vice president of the company next to them and say, well, let's go get a sandwich. They don't do that. They're much more courageous than I will ever be. Much more. But I have taken those experiences and I've put them into an impossible situation that I feel good about, that relates so directly to you. It's about stopping prostitution. People call it sex trafficking. I don't know why that makes them feel better. It's really prostitution. And guess what? You have a choice about how you're going to attack this. An FBI agent told me that he was talking to a pimp and he was interviewing him. How do you find your women and your girls? Because the average age in which a female starts on the street is 15. 15. 1-5. Okay. So he says, I go to a mall and I look around and I find a girl walking by herself. Okay. Those of you, women and girls, you understand that has meaning, a girl walking by herself. Guys, we don't go to malls and walk around by ourselves. That is a social event. We do it with another girl, okay? So I go and I find a girl walking by herself. And I say to her, hey, you have beautiful eyes. And if she looks me back in the face and says, thank you, then I just keep going. And then I look for the next girl walking by herself and I say, hey, you've got beautiful eyes. And if she looks down at her shoes and says, no, I don't. He said, I know I've got her. So are we going to be able to stop having girls walk in the mall and look at their shoes and say, no, I don't? I want to. I hope to. That's the supply for the prostitution. She gets picked up in about 48 hours from the time she has run away from home. So we can try to staunch the supply, and there are a lot of great groups doing that. We can try to stop the pimps. That's the distribution system. Supply, distribution. What does that leave in economic theory? Supply and demand. Thank you. And we can say, no, actually, we're going to stop the demand. Say what? You know, the demand, the buyers. What? I mean, boys, you know, boys will be boys. You know how many men and boys say that they have purchased? About 15% have purchased the body of a woman or a girl. 15%. Do you know what that translates to in the United States? It's about 15 million. This is not, I mean, look, I know a number of survivors, the women and the girls, and I probably know some pimps, but I'm not aware of it. I know hundreds of Johns. And in fact, a few of them, a very few, have told me, but you know, they're at my dinner table, they're in my classroom, they're at church, you know, they're in this auditorium. These are not just bad guys, okay? average, white, middle class, lives in the suburbs and has children. The girl, average, impoverished, black, brown, much, much younger than the guy. Okay, so this is a social justice issue. And when you say we can't address it, what are you saying? What are you saying? You know that something that is this egregious, we can't stop? Well, we used to say that about domestic violence. Some of you over 50, we worked on setting up shelters for battered women. Y'all remember those? And finally, some of us said, how come they are leaving their homes with their children? What is this about? The guys stay in the home, and the women who are being beaten up have to leave? And we got some laws changed. And you know what? It still happens. Guys still beat up their partners, but it's against the law. And they're considered like, something's wrong with you, guy. And that's what we're going to do. It's good for the guys to change. It's good for society to change. It's absolutely necessary for the women and girls. Yeah. So thank you. I hear the energy. I hear the belief. And so that's what I want to close with. You know, what do we do about that feeling like, well, you know, this isn't really something I can attack, or, you know, I guess if I were in that mall, I don't know what I would say if someone came up and said that to me. Probably I'd say, well, no, I don't. Or I don't know if every boy and man in my life had been killed. I don't know how I would react. Or gosh, I can really relate to Swanee at the top of that elevator. What's she supposed to do? Well, one of the things I've learned is the art of pretending. So let me close this out and sing a song that those of you over 50 know. I'll just sing a little snippet of it. It's from The King and I. And you're welcome to sing along. Whenever I feel afraid, I hold my head erect and whistle a happy tune, and no one will suspect I'm afraid. While shivering in my shoes, I strike a careless pose and whistle a happy tune, so no one ever knows I'm afraid. Now, this is the best line. Are you ready? Okay. The result of this deception is very strange to tell. Sing it with me. 'Cause when I fool the people I fear, I fool myself as well. Okay? So that's the answer. I'm telling you, when you get up in the morning and you think, what am I going to do today? Well, got to be careful. I think I can accomplish this. I think I can do that. I mean, come on. My challenge to you is by tomorrow's breakfast, you think of 6 impossible things. 6 that you're going to do by breakfast. 6 impossible things, and I'm going to give you all day today to choose them. Okay, thank you all so much for letting me have you.